In this movie, we're going to demonstrate the various techniques for duplicating the various different documents that are associated with a CSCS activity. So a CSCS activity, again, is going to be housed in a website. We're using Google Sites. But it'll draw upon the collaborative resources from Google Drive, namely spreadsheets and forms, documents, presentations, drawings, among others. But the most commonly used ones are spreadsheets and forms, and so that's where we're going to start. Now, a spreadsheet is basically the data table that's generated from a form. You can think of a form as a questionnaire or a survey, but it can have many different applications, and a form has to put that data someplace. So if each person gets a form, they submit it, then it's going to go into a spreadsheet. Spreadsheets can also stand alone on their own, and we'll see that as well. So what we're going to do is we're going to look back at our activity here, which was our density buoyancy activity, that had a spreadsheet which was not associated with a form. In other words, this one right here is simply a spreadsheet to which everybody has been given access. And you may remember from the previous video that if you create a mail group in Gmail that has all of the email addresses or Gmail addresses of the participants, then you can call upon that by name. And this one right here happens to be called HPCA for Hewlett-Packard Catalyst Academy, and it's going to be the demonstration number 1. So this is going to have 11 different entries in it, so 11 different participants. So if I wanted to share this document with others, if I'm the owner, I would click up on the share, and then I can enter in here the name of the group, and since it's associated directly with my Gmail contact list, I can see that there it is. There's HPCA demonstration 11 contacts. And I'm going to give all these people editing privileges so they can have the full capability for editing, but they're not owners. Notice again that they can edit, they can change. I'm still remain the owner on it. So all those that I've added in there, right there, these individuals would receive an email in their Gmail account, which would say you now have editing privileges on this particular document. And then they could categorize it and organize it in their own folders as they saw fit. So when they look at their own Google Drive, they will see, oh, here's floaters and sinkers, which has been shared with me. It'll generally show up at the top if they're listing by most recent. But they could then organize that if they wanted to put that in a particular folder. They could classify this on a folder, which I'm going to do right now, and I'm going to say I'd like to put that in my CSCS folder, and I think since it happens to be either a chemistry or a physics principle, I'll put it in one of those folders, and there it is right there. It's already at that point. So then they would say save, and then this would be listed in that particular folder for future reference. So you're going to want to organize your Google Drive with folders over here, just the way you would your personal computer. Just remember that all of these folders are now in the cloud, and they can contain a variety of different documents, both the 5 interactive collaborative Google documents we mentioned, plus you can upload Word documents, PowerPoint presentations, etc., and they can be housed in there and downloaded from there. So what happens is that once they receive that, if they open that up, they're going to see, oh wow, okay, I am now an owner of this. I can edit this. Well, they can also copy it, just like you can copy a website, as you saw in the previous one. You can copy an individual Google spreadsheet or presentation or doc. And so if you clicked on the file here, you can see that there's an option here to make a copy. Once that copy is made, it's going to appear in the in the Google Drive with the title Copy of Floaters and Sinkers. Now, it's important that you keep that title there so you realize you're not working on the original. Rather, you're working on a copy that you've made. Now, if each individual who is an editor on this makes their own copy, they will have essentially duplicated that into their own accounts. And if they haven't shared the privileges with others, then they've made a unique copy that nobody else can touch. Even though it looks identical, they alone have the sharing privileges. They could then set the sharing privileges to individual sharing privileges, or to the world as they saw fit. So at this point, again, the advantage of doing this is that you get the entire spreadsheet intact. And this URL right here, which is kind of off screen, but the URL for this site right here could then be copied and pasted into a link on a Google spreadsheet. Now, obviously this table has a lot of data from previous students and so forth. And since this one, you're simply assigning students to enter their data into a particular block, like A, B, or C, we could eliminate the irrelevant information so that it could be populated by new groups. So if we highlighted this and said, okay, I would like now to take this and I'm going to delete the values, it'll keep all the formatting, but it'll essentially blank out the table so that it can be used for future students. So one of the values of the revision history is that you can go back and you can see who has made what changes. So the revision history is going to be under the File menu, and you can click on See Revision History. And you can see all the various different authors on the document. In this case, you can see that this document's been changed numerous times. If I went back to an earlier version, say this one right here, that you can see that the data, this is the data that existed at that time, and if you say restore this version, then all that data goes directly back into the spreadsheet. The value of that is that you can track who has done what, because it'll all be color-coded, and a name will be associated with a particular change in the documentation. Now, if we click over here and we look at the plot of student data, this information here is coming from that chart. So if I looked on the advanced edit here and looked at the start menu, you could see that it was coming from student data. Right there it says student data, which happens to be this tab, from the range C2 to E32. So looking back on this, you can see here that here's C2 to E32. This would be C, D, and E. So it's obviously plotting the volume of both on one axis, and then the floaters and the sinkers are on the other axes. And when this plots out, we see data like this. So let's say a student enters some data. In this case, let's say their group D is entering data here, but instead of putting 7, they actually put 70. So that should be reflected immediately in the cloud. And sure enough, you can see that this data point right here is the data point that's spurious. This one here is a floater, and yet it is grouped with all of the sinkers on this side of the axis. So you can identify outliers, you can identify bad data, and so forth instantly, and particularly when you start to compare it with the rest of the class data. So again, the advantage of setting things up so that you give permission by saying sharing permissions here with a particular group is that anybody in that group can have access. Again, just to review how that's done. If I've made a mail group in Gmail, I can simply type in the name for that group, and I can say everybody in that group can edit it, and I'm going to notify the people by email. You could add a message if you wanted to, but when they get this in their email, they're going to see that now they are now editors. So all these people here would be editors of this document, so they could then make changes and get those changes to be tracked. Now, alternatively, you may want to set up the spreadsheet so that anybody can edit without actually having to have a Gmail account. So we could blank out some of this data as we've done before. We highlight it and we go to edit and simply delete the values. Deleting the values keeps all the formatting and the colors and so forth in place. And now you can share this, but instead of being private, okay, you could change this to anyone with the link can also edit. Now in that case, that anybody could make contributions to this spreadsheet, but the disadvantage is when you looked in revision history, or if you looked real time when they're editing it, you won't be able to see who's doing it. They'll all show up as anonymous. So it's best to make a specific group which is tied to their Gmail and their name so you can see who's doing what. But if you need to do something quick, or if you just trust your students a lot, you can simply set it there for public. Anybody in the public with the link can edit it. And since the URL for the site is so unusual, the only people that would actually be able to find it would be people that had that link, which you'd have to put on a website. So the advantage of setting it up by sharing, either that the whole world can edit or for individuals in your group can edit, is that if anybody can do that, they can then go up here and they can say, you know what, I would like to duplicate the entire spreadsheet by making a copy, and then they would have all the associated tabs and so forth with it at the same time. So now is your opportunity to do this. You can go ahead and look at this floaters and sinkers spreadsheet, and go ahead and I've set it up so that it'll be public editing, so you can simply click on it, make a copy of it. As long as it says copy of at the top, you're not destroying the original. Just make sure that you've made a copy by saying File, Make a Copy, and then the only one you should be working on from that point is the copy of floaters and sinkers, so you don't destroy the original one. Again, I still have the ownership, so I could go back with the revision histories and reset it, but it would confuse other students. So now is your opportunity to try that.